Hi everybody, Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple here. If you like what you see, please remember, thumb up the video, consider subscribing and comment to let me know your thoughts about the game or the video in general. Before we go any further though, a word from our sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk. KIENDA stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to KIENDA and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So on behalf of KIENDA, we have a new game on my shelf called Get On Board New York and London. Forget the New York and London, it's basically Get On Board. Now, this is a flippin' right game. Get out! Get out of there! Yeah, I know, I don't exactly have the best history with this genre of games, and I certainly was a little bit skeptical at first. It's like, oh great, another one of these. But, a couple of things about this one though. Firstly, it's a re-implementation of a game called Let's Make a Bus Route, which has been getting quite a lot of buzz from the community, and I figured, well, okay, that's got to be worth checking out. But also because of a certain individual's name on the box, Sashi. If you know anything about what I've been saying, there is a game on my shelf, let me just get it for you right now, that I have been singing the praises of, Coffee Roaster. Great solo game, designed by Sashi as well. Sashi does a lot of these Japanese games which are just like really interesting little quirky light games. They're pleasant, they're zen-like, they work. And so with his name on the back, I thought, oh yeah, I want to try out more of your design, so you know what, let's give it a try and see what it's like. So in Get On Board, you essentially have basically your choice of New York or London, depending on which, how many players you've got. And much like every flippin' right, it's essentially a case of crossing off a ton of stuff on your sheet to earn points. Now you might think, well, hang on, that sounds a little bit dull and just like the rest. Where are you going with this, Luke? Well, there's the crux here. You have a map, whether it's New York for 2 or 3 players or London for 4 to 5 players. And what you are doing is, as ticket cards are placed out, based on which markers you're allowed to do, which is dictated at the top of your sheet, it tells you what pieces you get to put on the board. You start off at a particular traffic light and you place the markers on the roads in order to start a route. You can never double back on yourself, otherwise you lose the game. This will never happen, trust me. But you're basically trying to go over all these different symbols of people and locations and cross them off your sheet, of which they score you points in different ways. So the students, for example, students have got a multiplication score. So the more students you have times the number of universities you visit, that's the number of points. Business people want you to pick them up and then take them to an office building. The same goes for tourists. They want to be picked up and then go to a landmark. The grannies, doesn't matter, you just go for as many grannies as you can. There's public objectives you can go for. You've got a Ticket to Ride style destination route that you can do for extra points. But on top of that, you also have to be careful not to cross paths with other players too much, because each of you has got these little markers which are kind of reminiscent of the routes from On the Underground. But as you're placing them on the board, if you place markers over anybody else's track, so for example, if I was to take a few here, and I'm laying out a route and I go over Blue's track, it causes traffic. It's a bit on your sheet you cross off, and the more of that you do, the more negative points you get. You can also change slightly what markers you have to put out and around. The top of your sheet tells you exactly, right, you're going to put out this many markers with this many turns, but you can cross off some negative point bits if you want to add or subtract more turns from that. So you have some flexibility, and you're going to use all 12 available tickets, which is 6 different methods of placing out markers, but it's different for every player. So the 2 ticket for you might not be the same as other players. And that's kind of just the gist of the game, really. You are laying out the route as best you can to try and go over the routes that you want to go. And you have to start at one bit and carry on. You can only sort of change direction as dictated by what markers you put down in the start of your turn. But you're constantly not only trying to plan your route effectively, but you're trying to stay out of the way of everybody else. And that's easier said than done, particularly on the London map, I found. With 4 players, even just 4 players, this gets clogged up quite a bit. You play London on 5 players and it is an absolute cluster. It is really just like chaos at its best. Now, you're probably saying, well, Luke, it's still a flip and right game. You're normally not as impressed by these. This is actually one I'm going to put my stake behind. What? This is actually a really good, fun flip and right game. And part of it is the simplicity of it. It's a very simple game to play, despite the fact that it's got a bit more than the average flip and right game. You know, you have this route aspect as well as what's on your particular sheet. But the turn sequence is pretty straightforward. It's just a case of flip a card from a small deck, of which there's only, 12 of them. It's a 12-round game, so it doesn't take very long. Flip the card, that tells you what markers you're going to do. Take it in turns to put your markers on the board. Go again. It doesn't really take more than about 45 minutes to play a game of this. It is pretty short, particularly if you're playing this with only 2 players. It's like it's lightning speed. But you've got multiple ways to score points. You could decide to ignore your route one entirely. You could go for the public objectives. You could just say, you know what, screw the objectives, I got my own thing to do. And it's just a very nice, fun little game. But that's not even the main reason I'm putting my stake behind it. One of the things I don't like about flip and right games is the lack of interaction. The idea that no matter what you're doing, no matter what the opponents are doing, doesn't matter. The opponents could do what they like. I can play Welcome 2 with 99 people. Great. You do not give a monkeys about the 98 other people playing the game with you because you don't influence each other.
There'll be plenty of time to discuss your objections when and if you return.
Cartographers tried to do the same thing by going, well, up to maybe 3 or 4 times in the game, on average 2 or 3, you will get to draw a shape on an opponent's board.
Whippy!
That's not sufficient interaction, I'm afraid. 2 or 3 small occasions you get to do that, forget it. But the one I always talk about a lot is Harvest Dice, where you're drafting the dice for the vegetable patch. In that, you can hate draft effectively, and whatever dice you leave behind influences the score of a particular veg. Therefore, other players are influencing what you do. This is a similar concept. Now, for part of the game, and certainly for maybe like the first half of it, maybe the first third, it's kind of like every other flip and right. You're not necessarily influencing much about what everyone else does. But before you know it, you are in each other's faces on this board. You know, especially, as I say, 3 players on New York, or 5 players on the London side in particular. You are constantly having to go, hey, get out of my face, get out of my face. You over there, I'm going this way, you, bye.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
It's not like as much interaction as, say, Harvest Dice, but it's enough for me to care that other players are there. I'm not just playing a solitaire game for the entire duration. I actually am interested to know, are you going to come my way and start blocking my route? Are you gunning for this public objective? Have you gone over particular areas that I want to go? There is a reason for people to be there. But on top of that, it's just a fairly simple game where every point is kind of precious, really. You can end up with some pretty tight finishes after this, and with multiple ways to score, there are multiple different paths to victory. Get all the grannies, get all the students, get all the tourists. Try and do as little traffic as possible. Say, you know what, I don't give a monkeys about traffic. I just need to get these public objectives and route done. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. And the pad is double-sided, so you can get plenty of plays in without too much trouble. The production's pretty decent. I mean, the board's nice and thick. The pad, it's very clear iconography. The only slight, I would say, rules issue is not so much a rules issue, but it's a little bit unintuitive, is how the businessmen and the tourists score. They have this situation where you have to pick up as many as you can on a row, and then as soon as you visit one of their buildings, you have to cross off the rest of the row, write the number of the column in the scoring bit, then start a new one. It gets a little bit fiddly how that works, but it's fairly minor. After a game or 2, you're pretty much sus with that, and you can just explain it to people really easily. There's not a lot else to say. It says 30 minutes on the box. That's pretty accurate if you're playing with 2 players, maybe even 3 players once you know what you're doing. 4 to 5, you're looking more at 45 minutes because everybody's got to go in turn order, so obviously the more players you have, the longer the game goes. It doesn't scale in that respect, but it handles 5 players well. It handles 2 players well, frankly. Easily suitable for children. It's definitely suitable for families. They give you pencils in the box, which is a nice change from some flipping rights I've seen. Literally, the only thing they could really do better on the production is to laminate the sheets. Big whoop, okay? Not a big deal. I mean, when you run out of this pad, you're going to laminate a few sheets anyway. Although, word of warning, The top tickets, as I mentioned, they're different for different sheets. You need to, I don't know how many combinations there are, but you might want to find out first before you finish off this pad, because you might accidentally wipe out an entire combination of markers without realizing it. You know, I don't know the exact number, maybe somebody can say in the comments, but whatever. So yeah, Get On Board has managed to surprise me.
I don't think any of us expected him to say that.
Sashi obviously knows what he's doing when it comes to designing nice little, like, quirky little games, and for somebody to basically go, Luke, I know you're not a fan of this genre, but here's one I reckon you'll like. Well done, you have. Harvest Dice and Get On Board are easily my two favourite flip and right, roll and write games right now. You know, they are the two that I would say, you know what, you gotta go out and get. Third favourite, I don't know, maybe Silver and Gold, just for how quick that one is. Although I've yet to try On Tour, and I've yet to try Super Skill Pinball. I'd like to try those two and see if they're any good fun. But honestly, this is a really nice, solid game. Not one I'm going to say I want to play over and over again. It's like, I've played it, I'm good, move on. It's sort of filler length, not quite, but it's still short and easy. It's easy, you know, easy enough for new players to pick up. I'd say even people completely new to the genre, gateway level, I think, actually. It's really not that quirky a game, but I don't know, maybe you want to start off with something like Silver and Gold, maybe, for a much easier gateway experience. But yeah, solid little game. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. It is a great little flip and write game that has, you know, proven to me finally that there's actually some really good ones in this genre. And yes, I know, if you're a fan of this genre, you're going to say, well, look, there's 100 other flip and writes that I like, but they just feel very samey to me. This one feels a little different, and if there's any out there that are similar to this kind of feel, by all means, let me know. Put it in the comments, I'd like to know more. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, remember, thumb up the video, consider subscribing, and leave a comment explaining anything you want to talk about this game. Don't forget that the Patreon campaign is always running if you want to help support the channel a little bit further, and thanks again to KIENDA.co.uk for sponsoring this video and providing a review copy of the game. Remember that just because you give me a review copy of a game does not guarantee it gets a good rating. That's the way I work. Until next time, you can check out more content on the channel, including my top 10 worker placement games, which is gaining good traction, as well as, well, I don't know, I'll put a random review here. I can't think of one right now. Take care, and remember, as always, it's only a game. Bye for now, everyone.